Hey there, y'all. I'm Tallulah Caldwell, a 38-year-old gal from Dallas, Texas. And let me tell you, this story's a wild ride. Picture this: a Christmas party, twinkling lights, and the smell of pecan pie in the air. Sounds perfect, right? Well, not when your mother-in-law decides to rip your heart out in front of everyone. That's where my journey starts. A betrayal so cold, it'd freeze the Lone Star State in July. Stick with me, because this tale of family drama, heartbreak, and a fight for justice is one you won't forget. The Warrington house in Preston Hollow buzzed with holiday cheer, the kind you'd see on a Hallmark card. I stood in their sprawling kitchen, rolling out dough for my mama's pecan pie recipe, the one she swore by every Christmas. My apron was dusted with flour, and I hummed along to Jingle Bells, playing from the Bose speaker on the counter. The air smelled like pine from the 10-foot tree in the living room, decked out with red and gold ornaments Marigold Warrington had bragged about buying from Neiman Marcus. I glanced at the sapphire ring on my finger, a family heirloom, my mama's wedding gift to me. It wasn't flashy, just a small blue stone set in silver, but it meant the world. 3 generations of love sparkled in that gem, and I'd worn it every day since my wedding to Grayson 5 years ago. I smoothed my red sweater, hoping I looked the part for Marigold's fancy Christmas party. She'd invited half of Dallas, neighbors, church friends, even the mayor's wife. But every time I caught her eye, my stomach knotted. Marigold, my mother-in-law, stood by the fireplace in an emerald green dress, her silver hair swept into a perfect updo, a glass of Napa Valley Cabernet in her hand. She was 65. But her sharp gaze could cut glass. She'd never liked me, called me that small-town girl, behind my back. But tonight, her stares felt heavier, like a storm brewing over the plains. "Need a hand, honey?" Grayson's voice broke my thoughts. My husband leaned against the doorway, sipping bourbon from a crystal tumbler, his tie loose around his neck. At 40, he still had that boyish charm. Dark hair, broad shoulders. But lately, he'd been distant, always on his phone, always working late. "I'm good," I said, forcing a smile. "Just finishing up the pie. You ready for the toast?" He shrugged, eyes darting to his phone. "Yeah, sure. Mom's got it all planned." He didn't even look at me, just walked off to join the crowd. My chest tightened, but I brushed it off. It was Christmas after all. Maybe he was just stressed. The party kicked into high gear. Laughter, clinking glasses, and kids running around with candy canes. I set the pie on the dessert table, next to Marigold's store-bought cheesecake she'd claimed was homemade. I was wiping my hands on a dish towel when Marigold's voice rang out, sharp as a church bell. "Everyone, gather round." She stood by the tree, raising her glass. The room hushed, all eyes on her. "I want to thank y'all for joining us tonight. The Warrington family has always been a pillar of this community, and I'm proud to carry on that legacy." I smiled, stepping closer to Grayson, but he didn't take my hand. Marigold's gaze landed on me, and her lips curled into something that wasn't a smile. "But let's be honest," she said, her voice dripping with honeyed venom. "Not everyone fits into a family like ours. Tallulah, dear, you try so hard, but you'll never be a Warrington. That little ring of yours? It's cheap, just like your roots. You don't belong here." The room went dead silent. My face burned, hotter than a Texas summer. I felt every pair of eyes on me. The mayor's wife, the neighbors, the church ladies, all whispering behind their hands. I looked at Grayson, waiting for him to say something, anything, but he just stared at his bourbon, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. "Mom, come on," he muttered. But there was no fight in his voice. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the hardwood floor. My throat tightened, but I forced out a shaky, "Excuse me," and bolted upstairs to the guest room. I locked the door, my hands trembling, as I sat on the edge of the bed. Marigold's words echoing in my head. "You don't belong here." I twisted the sapphire ring on my finger, clinging to the one thing that felt like home. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually I went to the dresser to splash water on my face. My jewelry box sat on the vanity, a small wooden thing my mama had carved. I opened it to put my ring away, safer there than on my finger with marigold around. But the ring was gone. My heart stopped. I tore through the box, then the drawers, panic clawing at my chest. It couldn't be gone. It was all I had left of Mama. I stormed downstairs, the party still in full swing, and found Marigold by the dessert table, slicing her cheesecake like nothing had happened. "Where's my ring?" I demanded, my voice louder than I meant. A few guests turned, eyebrows raised. Marigold didn't even flinch. She set down the knife, her eyes cold as ice. "I took it," she said, like she was talking about borrowing a scarf. "Grayson needed the money more than you. Don't make a scene, Tallulah. It's Christmas." I blinked, her words hitting me like a slap. "Needed the money for what?" I asked, my voice shaking. But I already knew. I'd heard the rumors, Grayson's late nights, his business trips to Houston. I just didn't want to believe it. Marigold smirked, leaning in so only I could hear. "For his new girl, Crystal. She's more his type. Now go serve the pie, dear. You're embarrassing yourself." I stumbled back, my vision blurring with tears. I looked for Grayson, but he was outside on the patio, laughing with some buddies, a fresh drink in his hand. He didn't care. Neither of them did. I ran back upstairs, grabbed my purse, and threw in a few clothes from the closet. My hands shook as I zipped it up, Marigold's voice still ringing in my ears. I slipped out the back door, the cold December air biting my cheeks. Snow dusted the ground, a rare sight in Dallas, and I stood on the driveway, staring at the house I'd tried so hard to belong to. The Christmas lights twinkled, mocking me with their cheer. I had $200 in my wallet, a beat-up Toyota in the garage, and a fire in my gut I'd never felt before. "They'll pay for this," I whispered, my breath fogging in the air. "I'll make them regret the day they crossed me." The deep Elm apartment smelled like damp carpet and regret. I sat on a sagging couch I'd found on Craigslist, staring at my phone, my thumb hovering over Velma's latest Facebook post. There she was, sipping a Mai Tai, on a Hawaiian beach, her silver hair glowing in the sun. Grayson stood beside her, his arm around a bleach blonde in a bikini, Crystal, his new girl. The caption read, "Family that plays together, stays together. Aloha from paradise." My stomach churned. They were living it up with the money from my ring, the one Mama gave me while I was here, scraping by with $200 and a broken heart. I tossed the phone onto the coffee table, a chipped thing I'd picked up at a yard sale. The apartment was a shoebox, peeling paint, a leaky faucet, and a view of a dumpster in the alley. I'd moved in a week ago, after leaving the Warrington house on Christmas night. My Toyota had barely made it here, coughing like it knew my life was falling apart. I'd spent my days staring at the walls, replaying Velma's words at the party. "You don't belong here." And Grayson's laugh, that gutless chuckle, as he let his mother tear me down. I needed that ring back. It was all I had left of Mama, of the woman who'd raised me to be strong. I grabbed my coat and drove to a pawn shop in Oak Cliff, a gritty part of Dallas, where neon signs flickered over cracked sidewalks. The guy behind the counter, a wiry man with a toothpick in his mouth, barely looked up from his magazine. "Sapphire ring, silver band?" I asked, my voice tight. "I need it back." He flipped through a ledger, then shook his head. "Sold it last week. Some collector in Austin bought it. Sorry, lady." My knees buckled. I gripped the counter, fighting tears. "You don't understand," I said. "That ring, it's everything to me." He shrugged, already turning back to his magazine. "Life's tough. You got $200? That's a start. Move on." I walked out, the December wind cutting through my thin coat. I didn't have a plan, but I needed to eat, so I took a job at Target in Galleria, Dallas, stocking shelves and wrapping gifts for last-minute Christmas shoppers. Every time I tied a ribbon, I saw Mama's face, her smile, as she'd slipped that ring on my finger the day I married Grayson. Now it was gone, and I was folding sweaters for minimum wage, my hands raw from the cold. One night, I was on break, sipping burnt coffee in the break room, when my phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn Marwood, my best friend since college. "I'm outside. Let me in. I've got wine." I trudged to the employee entrance, and there she was, bundled in a scarf, holding a bottle of cheap Merlot from Walmart. Evelyn's freckled face lit up when she saw me, but her smile faded fast. "You look like hell, Tallulah," she said, pulling me into a hug. We sat on the couch in my apartment, passing the bottle between us. I told her everything: Velma's betrayal, Grayson's affair, the ring. Evelyn's hazel eyes flashed with anger. "They sold your mama's ring to fund his side chick? That's low, even for Velma." She took a swig, then set the bottle down hard. "You can't let them win. You're stronger than this." "I don't feel strong," I admitted, my voice cracking. "I feel like I've lost everything." Evelyn grabbed my hand, her grip firm. "You haven't lost you. That's what matters. I've got a lead. My friend Juniper works at a startup in the arts district. They need an assistant. It's small, but it's a start. You in?" I hesitated. A startup. I was an accountant, not some creative type. But what did I have to lose? "Fine," I said, wiping my eyes. "I'll meet her." The next day, I drove to the Arts District, a trendy part of Dallas, with murals on every corner and coffee shops packed with hipsters. Juniper's startup was a tiny office above a gallery, cluttered with sketches and gemstones. She was a wiry woman in her 40s, with a nose ring and a no-nonsense vibe. "You're Tallulah?" she asked, looking me up and down. "Evelyn says you're a hard worker. We design jewelry, small stuff, but we're growing. You'll handle inventory, maybe help with designs if you've got an eye. Minimum wage to start. Take it or leave it." I took it. The work was tedious, sorting beads, logging shipments, but I found myself drawn to the design table, where Juniper sketched delicate rings and necklaces. One day, I picked up a pencil and started drawing, my hand moving on its own. A sapphire ring, just like Mama's, took shape on the paper, its lines sharp and sure. Juniper glanced over my shoulder. "Not bad," she said, her tone grudging. "You've got a knack. Keep at it." That night, I sat in my apartment, the sketch on my lap. An idea sparked, small but fierce. Caldwell Gems, a brand that honored family, love, the things Velma and Grayson had tried to take from me. I'd build it from nothing, just like Mama had built a life for me after Daddy left. I'd get that ring back, and I'd make them pay. I looked out the window at the Dallas skyline, the green-tinted Fountain Place glowing in the distance. "I'm coming for you," I whispered, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. "And when I'm done, you'll wish you'd never crossed me." The Arts District office buzzed with a quiet hum, the kind that felt like hope taking root. I hunched over a cluttered desk, my pencil scratching out a sapphire ring design, its edges sharp as my resolve. 3 years had passed since that Christmas nightmare, and I'd clawed my way out of the gutter. My new life in uptown Dallas was a far cry from that dingy Deep Ellum apartment, a sleek condo with a view of the skyline, the green glow of Fountain Place winking at me every night. But I wasn't here to admire the view. I was here to build an empire, one that would bury Velma and Grayson in the ashes of their own greed. Caldwell Gems had started small, just me and a handful of sketches at the Dallas Farmers Market. I'd set up a rickety booth between a honey vendor and a guy selling cowboy hats, my jewelry laid out on a velvet cloth I'd bought at Joann Fabrics. The first day, I sold 3 pieces, a pair of earrings, a bracelet, and a ring inspired by Mama's sapphire. A woman in a Stetson hat had held the ring up, her eyes misty. "This reminds me of my grandmother's," she'd said, slipping me a crumpled 20. That 20 felt heavier than gold. It was proof I could do this. Word spread like wildfire through Dallas. By the end of the first year, I'd saved enough to buy back Mama's ring from that collector in Austin. I drove down I-35 in my beat-up Toyota, the AC broken, sweat dripping down my back. The collector, a wiry man with a handlebar mustache, handed me the ring in a velvet pouch. I slipped it on, the sapphire catching the light like a piece of the sky. "You're back where you belong," I whispered, my throat tight. That night, I launched the Legacy Collection. Every piece a tribute to family, to the love Velma had tried to steal. It sold out in a week. Nordstrom came knocking in year 2. I met their buyer at North Park Center, a polished woman in a pencil skirt who sipped an iced latte while flipping through my portfolio. "Your story resonates," she said, tapping a photo of the sapphire ring. "Women want meaning, not just sparkle. We'll take 500 pieces for the holiday season." I walked out of that meeting, my heels clicking on the marble floor, and screamed into my scarf in the parking lot. Caldwell Gems was no longer a dream. It was a force. But success didn't come without thorns. Velma wasn't about to let me rise without a fight. I'd heard whispers through Evelyn. Velma had been bad-mouthing me to her high society friends, calling my jewelry cheap trinkets, and me a gold digger who got lucky. Then came the real blow. One of my suppliers, a gemstone dealer in Houston, backed out of a contract last minute. "Sorry, Ms. Caldwell," he'd said over the phone, his voice shaky. "I got a call from a Mrs. Warrington. She said if I worked with you, she'd make sure I never sold another stone in Texas." My blood boiled. Velma was playing dirty, using her old money connections to choke me out. I drove to Houston that weekend, the Texas sun blazing through my windshield. The supplier's office was a squat building off the freeway, the air thick with humidity. I marched in, my jaw set, and slapped a stack of purchase orders on his desk. "You see these?" I said, my voice low but steady. "Nordstrom, Macy's, even Neiman Marcus. They're all buying from me. You think Velma Warrington can stop that? She's a has-been, and you're betting on the wrong horse." He fidgeted, then nodded. "Fine, I'm back in." I left with a handshake and a fire in my chest. Velma thought she could break me again. She was dead wrong. By year 3, Caldwell Gems hit $5 million in revenue. I stood in my new office in the design district, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows and a wall of sketches. Every piece a dagger aimed at the Warringtons. My phone buzzed with a notification. D Magazine had just published their latest issue, and I was on the cover. The headline screamed, "From rock bottom to retail royalty, the rise of Caldwell Gems." I traced the photo of myself, standing in a navy blazer, the sapphire ring glinting on my finger. I looked like a woman who'd fought and won. That night, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Velma. My pulse quickened, but I answered, my voice ice cold. "What do you want?" Her tone was syrupy, the kind of fake sweet that made my skin crawl. "Tallulah, darling, I saw the magazine. I'm so proud of you. We're family, aren't we? I only took that ring to help Grayson. Let's put the past behind us." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed in my condo. "Family? You chose your family when you sold my ring to fund his mistress. You humiliated me in front of half of Dallas. Don't call me again, Velma. You'll need more than fake tears to crawl back into my life." I hung up, my hands shaking with rage. Evelyn had warned me. Velma and Grayson were drowning in debt. Grayson's real estate deals in Houston had tanked, and Velma's shopping sprees at Neiman Marcus had drained their accounts. They were circling like vultures, hoping to peck at my success. But I wasn't the same Tallulah they'd kicked to the curb. I walked to my window, the Dallas skyline stretching out like a promise. The green glow of Fountain Place shimmered, a beacon in the dark. I clenched the sapphire ring on my finger, its cool metal grounding me. "This isn't the end," I said, my voice a low growl. "I'm coming for everything you hold dear, and when I'm done, you'll have nothing left to lose." The auction house in downtown Dallas buzzed with whispers, a hive of high society vultures circling their prey. I stood at the back, my navy blazer crisp against my skin, the sapphire ring on my finger glinting like a shard of ice. The Warrington mansion in Preston Hollow was up for grabs. Velma and Grayson had lost it to the bank, their empire crumbling like a house of cards in a Texas tornado. I'd waited 3 years for this moment, and I wasn't here to bid quietly. I was here to make them bleed. The room was packed with Dallas elite, oil tycoons, real estate moguls, and the kind of women who wore pearls to brunch. A chandelier cast golden light over the crowd, but the air felt heavy, charged with anticipation. Evelyn had tipped me off about the auction last week, her voice crackling with excitement over the phone. "They're done, Tallulah. The bank's taking everything. You've got to be there." I'd marked the date in red, my heart pounding with a hunger I hadn't felt since that Christmas night. Velma and Grayson slunk in, their heads low, but they couldn't hide. Velma's emerald dress hung loose on her frame, the fabric wrinkled, her silver hair a mess of frizz. Grayson trailed behind, his suit ill-fitting, his face pale and unshaven. They looked like ghosts of their former selves, stripped of the arrogance that had once defined them. The crowd parted, whispers trailing in their wake. "The Warringtons, I heard they're broke," a woman in a fur coat muttered to her friend. "Serves them right," the friend replied, her voice sharp as a switchblade. The auctioneer, a stout man with a Stetson hat, took the podium. "Next up, the Warrington estate in Preston Hollow. Starting bid, $1.5 million. Hands shot up, voices calling out numbers like gunfire. I waited, my pulse steady, my eyes locked on Velma. She stood near the front, clutching her purse like a lifeline, her knuckles white. Grayson shifted beside her, his gaze darting around, searching for a savior that wouldn't come. $2 million, I called out, my voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Heads turned, eyes wide. Velma spun around, her face twisting with shock as she spotted me. I stepped forward, my heels clicking on the polished floor, my chin high. The sapphire ring caught the light, a silent taunt. I saw the recognition in her eyes. The ring she'd stolen, the one she'd sold to fund Grayson's affair with Crystal. Now it was back, and so was I. $2.1 million, a man in a cowboy hat countered. I didn't flinch. $2.5 million, I said, my tone cold as a winter wind. The room buzzed, the tension thick enough to choke on. Velma's lips trembled, her hands shaking as she gripped Grayson's arm. He looked like he might bolt, his eyes wild with panic. The bids climbed, but I didn't back down. $3 million, I said, my voice a hammer striking steel. The cowboy hat shook his head, stepping back. The auctioneer scanned the room. Going once, going twice. Sold to the lady in the navy blazer for $3 million. The gavel slammed down, a thunderclap sealing their fate. Velma staggered forward, her face a mask of desperation. She dropped to her knees in front of me, her purse spilling coins across the floor. "Tallulah, please," she begged, her voice a broken wail. "I have nothing left. Don't take the house. It's all I have. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Tears streaked her makeup, leaving black rivers on her cheeks. The crowd watched, some with pity, others with disgust. I crouched down, my eyes level with hers, my voice low and sharp as a razor. "You said I didn't belong, Velma. You said I wasn't a Warrington. You sold my mama's ring to fund your son's mistress, and you laughed in my face. Now look at you, crawling in the dirt, begging for mercy you don't deserve. Who doesn't belong now?" Grayson lunged forward, his face red with rage. "You can't do this to my mother," he shouted, his voice cracking. "You're a nobody, Tallulah. You'll always be a nobody." I stood, towering over him, my gaze a storm of fury. "Shut your mouth, Grayson. You chose Crystal over me. You let your mother humiliate me in front of half of Dallas. You're the nobody here, a broke, spineless fool who can't even look me in the eye." I turned to the crowd, my voice rising. "And for the record, I found Crystal. She dumped him the second his money ran dry. Guess she wasn't his type after all." Gasps rippled through the room. Velma sobbed, her hands clawing at the floor. I leaned in, my voice a whisper only she could hear. "Oh, and one more thing. I know you tried to sabotage Caldwell Gems. You called my suppliers, spread lies. tried to choke me out, but you failed, Velma. I'm stronger than you'll ever be. I straightened, brushing a speck of dust off my blazer. The auctioneer handed me the deed, the paper crisp in my hands. I turned to leave, the crowd parting like the Red Sea, their whispers a chorus of awe and judgment. Velma's cries echoed behind me, a hollow sound that fueled my fire. I stepped into the Dallas sunlight, the deed to the Warrington mansion tucked under my arm. My new Lexus gleamed in the parking lot, a far cry from the beat-up Toyota I'd driven 3 years ago. I slid into the driver's seat, the sapphire ring catching the light like a flame. "This is just the beginning," I said, my voice a low growl. "I'm not done with you yet." The Warrington mansion, now mine, stood like a crown on the hill in Preston Hollow, its white columns gleaming under the Dallas sun. I'd stripped away every trace of Velma's gaudy taste, painting the walls a crisp pearl white, replacing her velvet drapes with sleek linen curtains. The sprawling estate was no longer a monument to her arrogance. It was the new headquarters of Caldwell Gems, a symbol of everything I'd fought for. I stood on the front lawn, my arms crossed, watching workers hoist a sign above the entrance. Caldwell Gems, where legacy shines. The sapphire ring on my finger caught the light, a quiet reminder of Mama's love and my revenge. Tonight was the grand opening, a celebration I'd planned down to the last detail. I'd invited Dallas's elite, Nordstrom buyers, D-Magazine editors, even the mayor's wife, who'd witnessed my humiliation at that Christmas party 3 years ago. The lawn buzzed with guests, their champagne flutes sparkling under string lights. A jazz band played Sweet Home Alabama, the notes drifting through the warm evening air. I wore a tailored emerald dress. Ironic, I know, but I wanted Velma to see me in her signature color, thriving where she'd failed. Evelyn sidled up to me, her freckled face glowing with pride. "You did it, Tallulah," she said, clinking her glass against mine. "This place, it's a masterpiece. And the look on Velma's face when you bought it, priceless." She grinned, sipping her drink. "Heard she's been calling around, begging for loans." "No one's biting." I smirked, my gaze scanning the crowd. "Good, let her squirm." I'd heard the rumors too. Velma and Grayson were shadows of their former selves. Grayson was working at a Home Depot in Plano, his hands calloused from stacking lumber, a far cry from the bourbon-sipping playboy he'd been. Velma had moved into a rundown apartment in East Dallas, her designer dresses replaced with thrift store finds. A recent Dallas Morning News article had sealed their fate, the fall of the Warringtons, from riches to ruin. I hadn't read past the headline. I didn't need to. Their downfall was my victory. The party was in full swing when I spotted her. Velma stood at the edge of the lawn, her figure frail in a faded dress, her silver hair pulled into a messy bun. She'd come uninvited, her desperation a stench in the air. She took a step toward the entrance, but my security team, 2 burly guys in black suits, blocked her path. "Ma'am, you're not on the list," one said, his voice firm. I set my glass down and walked over, my heels sinking into the grass. The crowd hushed, sensing the storm brewing. Velma's eyes met mine, wide with fear, but she forced a smile, her lips trembling. "Tallulah, please," she said, her voice a cracked whisper. "I just want to talk. I've lost everything. My home, my son's future. I'm sorry for what I did. Let me in. We can start over." I stopped a few feet away, my gaze cold as a winter frost. "Start over," I said, my voice low but sharp enough to cut. "You sold my mama's ring to fund your son's affair. You humiliated me in front of half of Dallas, called me cheap, said I didn't belong. You tried to sabotage my business, Velma. And now you want to start over. You're not sorry. You're just scared." Her face crumpled, tears pooling in her eyes. "I was wrong," she choked out, her hands clasping together. "I'm begging you, Tallulah, have mercy." I reached into my clutch and pulled out a small box, the kind Caldwell Gems used for its cheapest pieces. I opened it, revealing a ring, a fake sapphire, the stone dull and lifeless. set in a flimsy band. I tossed it at her feet, the box landing in the grass with a soft thud. "That's the only thing you're worth," I said, my voice a blade of ice. "Take it and get out. You're not welcome here." Velma stared at the box, her hands shaking as she bent to pick it up. A piece of paper fluttered out, my handwriting scrawled in black ink. "This is all you deserve." She let out a sob, clutching the fake ring to her chest, her shoulders heaving. The crowd watched in stunned silence, some whispering, others shaking their heads. I turned on my heel, my dress shimmering under the lights, and walked back to the party, leaving her broken in the shadows. The rest of the night was a blur of congratulations and champagne toasts. I barely noticed. My mind was already on the future. Caldwell Gems was just the beginning. I'd built an empire from nothing, and I wasn't stopping now. A few weeks later, I sat in a studio downtown, a microphone clipped to my blazer, the host of the Heart of Texas Talk smiling across from me. The podcast was a hit in the South, loved by women who craved stories of grit and glory. "Tallulah Caldwell," the host said, her voice warm as a summer breeze, "you've inspired millions with your journey. From betrayal to triumph, what's next for you?" I leaned into the mic, my sapphire ring catching the studio lights. "I'm just getting started," I said, my voice steady. "I built Caldwell Gems to honor my mama, to prove that family isn't about blood, it's about love. And to every woman listening, don't let anyone steal your worth. Fight for it, like I did." Back at the mansion, I sat in my new office, the walls lined with sketches of my next collection. A photo of Mama sat on my desk, her smile as bright as the day she'd given me the ring. "I did it, Mama," I whispered, my fingers tracing the frame. Velma and Grayson were gone from my life, their names nothing but dust in the wind. I'd taken everything they held dear, and I'd done it on my terms. The Dallas skyline stretched out beyond my window, the green glow of Fountain Place, a beacon in the night. I leaned back in my chair, the sapphire ring a steady weight on my finger. This wasn't the end. It was a new beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. If this story resonated with you, don't just keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful stories, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters, and I read every single one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.